Nim Shapira, welcome to my podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
You're a creative director, you're a multidisciplinary artist, and you're the filmmaker of the movie Torn, which we're going to talk about, which is actually Oscar qualified now for the Academy Awards for Best Documentary.
Yeah.
Congratulations on
Thank you.
that.
Crossing my fingers.
Yeah. Amazing. I just actually finished watching it. It's such a powerful documentary. And it's about, just to speak a little bit about it first to the audience, it's about situation right after October 7th when these two artists have this idea that they're going to print posters of the people who were kidnapped from the kibbutzim and from the Nova Festival area and everywhere in Israel. And they made these posters that said kidnapped and the picture of the person, and hanging this up on poles in New York City, which spread as a viral phenomenon, and also afterwards being ripped down and from other people from the more pro-Palestinian side of things, and the whole dynamics and what happened between these things. So how would you say that? How did you get the idea to make this movie?
I would say that this is my first documentary. I, I didn't want to make the film. The film wanted me to make it, and I lived in New York for 12 years, almost 13 years. New York is my home. And after October 7 happened, those posters, like you said, were put up. And I was very proud of my hometown because, with the horrible day, October 7, that was kind of like the silver lining of like people on the other side of the world, thousands of miles or thousands of kilometers, are seeing the pain. And the posters, it's just glue and paper, but we look at things in life, not our generation, but like throughout history. And these are symbols. These are symbols about identity. These are symbols about grief. And I was very proud and happy that my city was standing up for those 251 hostages that were kidnapped by Hamas. And not that it matters because the 251 hostages are Hindus and Buddhists. There are Christians and Muslims and Jews from over 40 nationalities, but it doesn't matter. Only if it was only Jews, it's also horrible. But I have to say it because this was an international hostage crisis, and the posters say kidnapped from Israel because it's not just Israelis. They were kidnapped from within Israel, but these are citizens of the world. And I think that the minute they were put up, they were taken down. And I thought that as a filmmaker that deals with, we are all storytellers. You're also a storyteller. I wanted to tell a story about how not only the posters were torn, but also the social fabric of the city was torn. And when I look at, why people are tearing down the posters, we're having a conversation now. It will take us probably an hour to explore all of the reasons. Like, I don't want to say it's because reason one or reason two. I think it's a battle of narratives, and it's a battle of stories. And I would say that removing the poster, there are so many people that rip down the posters, right? Every ethnical background and every age group. So I think that is usually when I show the film, there's always like psychologists and sociologists in the audience that talk about why is this happening. But I think it's an interesting phenomenon that so many people without skin in the game took it upon themselves to remove those posters. And at the end of the day, if you need to summarize it in a way, it's about erasing a narrative. It's about removing a narrative that you do not like to see in the public sphere. And I almost equate it to hitting the unfollow button on the social media. Yeah.
That's a really nice way to put it. Unfollow that kind of story. Unfollow that side of everything that has happened. I don't want to see that. I only want my feed in reality. And I think I remember from the start of the movie, I think you say in text there that this is a movie more about questions than about the answers. And I feel so too. I feel like it has the ambition to try to see all kinds of viewpoints on this, and it even tries to see it from the viewpoint of those ripping it down, not just from the Israeli point of view, which I think is really commendable to try to distance yourself and
Yeah.
seeing it. Was that difficult too for you, being from Israel, and probably I would assume this is really personal for you to be able to try to or have the ambition to see it from their point of view as well?
Um, I would say this. A lot of people say, congratulations, you made a film that is neutral. So I tell them, nothing in art can be neutral. Everything is political. But I will say that I have many hats. I am an Israeli. I'm a Jew. Um, I'm also an American. And this film is about Jewish pain. But if I want the other side to see my pain, I also have to see their pain. And again, we're talking about stories, we're talking about narratives. I don't have to agree with everything the other side is saying, but in order to come to some sort of a understanding, or at least, understanding the other side doesn't mean that you agree. It means that you understand with their point of view. And I think that because of that, it was important for me to understand the different motives and not flatten the person on the other side that is ripping the poster. Because that thing that happened, which is ugly, it's anti-freedom of speech, it's anti-American, but it happened, and it happened a lot of times, and it had a lot of different consequences, from people getting doxxed to people getting fired, but people continued to do it. So, if I want to respect my audience and I want to respect the art of documentary filmmakers, I also need to show the full picture and try to understand the different point of views.
Do you think there were multiple reasons for why those people decided to rip down the posters? Were there a multitude of different aspects of why they did that?
Yes, of course. I think that, first of all, let's just say that these posters, the artists that created the posters, if you go back to the first few months, they were getting life threats, and they had to move 7 different apartments. People blamed them for being CIA or Mossad agents. These are things that they got messages. And also, they were blamed that they are kind of like agents of the government. And I always say, if you know anything about Israel in the first few weeks of the war, you know that the government was not functioning. It was the citizens that had the resilience and the initiative to do something. So when they put up the posters, this file of names basically went viral, and people put it up. Now, you asked me about why are people ripping it down. So I will say the posters became so viral that it got into every major Western city, from New York to Shanghai. And it got translated to so many languages. And I think that the people that, before I talk about the reasons, I will just say that the people that ripped down the posters in some way did a service to the posters, because it just make it more famous and got, we talk a lot about boycotts, and like, are boycotts helping or not helping, and what is helping? Sometimes if you want to censor art, and we have the art history is 40,000 years old, but we know from mostly the Middle Ages, but not just, like, how art was censored, and how there's an art that is allowed and an art that is not allowed. Sometimes that just like makes what is forbidden more famous. So the people that rip down the posters just make it both on the physical sphere, on the streets, more famous, and also online. This is a war that was fought on the streets of New York, but also on social media. And, because so many people took part in it, there's, a lot of reasons. So I will say that some people that rip it down, they are anti-Semites. There's no doubt about it. But some people on the other side of the spectrum, they see on social media, the algorithms only show them what is happening in Gaza. And there are a lot of innocent civilians that were killed in Gaza. And there are a lot of atrocities that happen in war in general and in this war in specific. So when you have an algorithm that shows you things like that, I think that you have either empathy fatigue or you just see one of the sides, again, because of the way the algorithms are built and our brains are wired. And your mission is to take down the narrative of the other side, because that narrative is a lie, right? Those people, and I heard it from friends and colleagues that I have, or I had, because they're not my friends anymore, people that I consider very smart, that the hostages are actors, the hostages are AI, the hostages, it's all it's all a made-up story. These are people that I considered friends for a few years in New York, and I always was very proud that I have so many international friends that live with me in New York, friends from the Middle East, from countries that Israel is not at peace with. So I had Iranian friends and I had Lebanese friends, but I also had Belarusian friends and I had Italian friends, and you name it. Like I don't want to name every country, but believe me, it's not this country or that country. It's every country. That and also a lot of American friends that I'm not friends with them anymore because it was too hard to debate when I argue with someone or I debate with someone about my lived experience, and they learn or study something from social media, or even if they read 10 books, right? Let's say they read 10 books or 100 books about the Middle East. They are joining a movie or a film that has been happening for such a long time. I was able to have better conversations with Palestinian Americans than with international friends that believe that they know it all. And I think that, focusing on the posters is a symbol, because the posters at the end of the day, paper and glue, that if they weren't ripped down, the paper would be bleached from the sun or washed away from the rain. But they were torn down. And when you talk about our culture today, you talk about microaggressions, you talk about, maybe it's, you don't feel aggressiveness, but you feel like you feel it in the street. You feel it in when you enter a coffee shop, or when I say where I'm from, right? Or even when I speak, I have an accent, even though I'm an American and I lived there for almost 13 years. So I thought the posters is kind of like a gateway to talk about all of these things, to talk about doxing, to talk about the algorithms in social media, to talk about how we are tribal and how we are siloed and echo chambered, and to talk about empathy. And I think kind of like that's the entire story in a nutshell. So if I can condense it, maybe it's kind of like the zeitgeist to what we've been going through.
Yeah, like a manifestation of everything that is happening, like in these posters, also shows the divide that happened.
Yeah.
That's something that surprised me as well, like after October 7th, just to see how that split societies that was like thousands of kilometers away from the Middle East and from Israel, where everything happened, but it split societies and friendships and families and workplaces and everywhere, like ripple effects from
Yes.
this place.
Yes.
How do you understand that? What happened? Why did that have that ripple effect all across the globe?
First of all, have to address that it happens, because I speak with some people that are in Scandinavia in the past 48 hours that I'm here, and some people don't even know that it had ripple effects on the community. I think that because there is so much actual, there's no competition in suffering, but there's a lot of people that, let's say, lost a family member or lost their home, or their business is now bankrupt because of the war. So when someone tells you, a friend of mine stopped speaking with me, or I was uninvited from a wedding, or people don't say hi to me in my college because I'm Jewish, uh, it's hard to compete with those bigger stories. But there is a very big ripple effect that is happening to so many of the Jewish communities. I'm sure that it also happens to people on the other side in their communities. Like I'm sure that there is empathy for Muslims or Palestinians, but I'm sure that they are also suffering. But again, I can only talk about my experience as a Jew and as an Israeli American. And I will say that it's been very, very bad for American Jews, specifically because every Jew is considered a complicit. Every Jew is considered to blame in what is happening right now. And I also heard some people say that anti-Semitism is happening because of Netanyahu. And when people tell me that, I always tell them anti-Semitism happens because of anti-Semites. Netanyahu is not helping it, but anti-Semitism is happening because of anti-Semites. And it's very important in this entire discussion to talk about agency and accountability, which is something that people are, if we even talk about ripping down a poster, you have people in my film that rip down a poster, and they are public servants. So they are either doctors or nurses or work in City Hall. And when they do this, when they rip a poster, they have the establishment behind them, and the establishment doesn't want to be associated with them. And they blame their firing, they blame the Zionist platforms. The last person that they blame is themselves. But actions have consequences. Do I think everyone that was fired from their job should have been fired from their job because they ripped down a poster? Of course not. But if you are a doctor and you have a lot of Jewish patients and you work in a city clinic, the city clinic will not want to work with you because they are losing businesses. And I can tell you this happens also on the other side. Like, I've been showing the film for over 100 times in the United States, from Miami to Seattle, in so many different places. And when I wanted to show it in Chicago, for example, I spoke to a cinema, and that cinema said, "We're really sorry, we want to show the film, but if we show it, our insurance will go up because we are afraid of protests that will happen." So at least they were candid with me. There are a lot of film festivals and a lot of distributors of films that just silent boycott you or don't answer you. And when you talk about the ripple effects of what is happening, I think that is something that you also can't measure, because you can't measure when someone is not talking to you. It is something that is systematic, even if, it's not like the committee of people that are not Jewish around the world decided we will boycott everything that is of that narrative. But what's happening when you boycott something, just like when you boycotted or ripped down the posters, you are creating, first of all, you are not advancing the discussion. You are either erasing the discussion or silencing speech, which can just lead to a worse environment. It's better to air things out. It's better for us to talk. And I think that cultures are different. In Israeli culture, everything is on the outside. I would say that in American culture, some things are more on the inside, or it depends on the relationship. But I would say that there is a reporter that I follow that talked about, she worked at the New York Times, and she talked about how when Hillary Clinton lost to Trump, again, it's her story, but I'm just repeating it. When Hillary lost to Trump, the New York Times, either the management or just the employees, took a day off for mental health. And she said that when she worked in the newspaper on October 7, no one expected her to take a day off, even though this day affected every Jewish person in the world, because everyone knows someone who is in Israel. And this was an attack on, not on soldiers, but an attack on civilians within the international recognized borders of Israel. So this is just one example. There are so many examples of those things that sometimes people don't even understand. Oh, that happened to me. Oh, I experienced that. Some people are so deep inside the trauma. And again, it doesn't take away the fact that in Gaza there is suffering, and it doesn't take away from the fact that in Israel there is also suffering, but we are so far away from the conflict, from the war. We don't have missiles and rockets on our heads, but we can't have a discussion with the other side or with a person, specifically not with people that don't have skin in the game and suddenly are more experts than you know.
Because that's what's so strange, because you have a lot of other atrocities around the world. You have nowadays like Sudan and Nigeria, you have what's happening in China, and you have women's situation in Iran, and you have Syria and Yazidis and all kinds of atrocities and terrorism everywhere in the world. But those situations, they don't split families in the same way. They don't split people at their workplaces. They don't split friendships. And yet this situation that happened October 7th, that has that ripple effect all across the globe. Even here in Norway, I've lost many friends over this, and I know a lot of people have lost all their friends over this, and family. And that's a unique thing about this situation that I haven't experienced before. And what do you think makes this situation have that effect? Why is that, and why is it so different from other situations?
It's a good question. I will say that there's several things that I can say to this question. So first, I will start with, I have been vegan for 15 years. And so I know what works and what doesn't work in activism. And I know that certain things work better and certain things work differently. And it also always depends on the audience. I also know that I have friends that don't go to eat with me because they know that I will judge them, or maybe they think that I will judge them. So, advocacy is always charged. I can also say that, let's say, people protest about the animal protein industry, and you can tell them, what about this or what about that? Why aren't you marching for women's rights? Why aren't you talking about poverty? So when you talk about why do you care about this conflict or not that conflict, they can respond with whataboutism, and it's always tricky. Having said that, in my film, I show that multiple things can be true at the same time. So I had to put it out there. I had to say, I'm not going to use the whataboutism, because you have every right to demand self-determination for the Palestinian people. First of all, it's a free country, and, you can join the fight. I will say that I have been advocating for Palestinian rights since I was 13. And I've been trying to promote coexistence since I was 13. I think what is very, very charged, and I think I am more confident to talk about it after 100 screenings and after meeting so many different people, Mormons and Muslims and Christians and evangelical Christians and Jews from the right wing and Jews from the left wing and Israeli Jews and Scandinavian Jews. And I screened it in Paris and I screened it in Spain. I think that there is the singling out of the Jew is something that is hypocritical in the sense that it connects, I think, to what you talked about, why this and not something else. The way that every Jew is considered complicit, like there's a TikTok video that I saw. It wasn't a famous TikTok video, but it's basically girls standing in the airport in New York and they see an ultra-Orthodox man and they start to cry and they say that they are triggered by his presence because he's probably supporting what is happening in Gaza. So it's just a video that I saw. I think that, minorities are always visible. When you talk about Jewish minorities, you basically talk about a minority that the Jewish minority is special because we are loyal to the country that we live in. We assimilate. That is also what I show in my film in one of the speeches that is given, that one of the speakers is saying her name is Linda Sarsour, and unfortunately she is a colleague of the new New York mayor, Mamdani. She's saying beware of the poster, beware of the people that document us when we are ripping down the posters, because they exist everywhere. They are in your college campus, they are in your supermarkets, and she's standing there in Grand Central Station with crowds of hundreds, if not thousands. And if you would replace it with every other type of minority group, newspapers would go crazy. And that is something that, it's very sad and it's very fascinating. The fact that the Jew is the scapegoat of the world. There is a very famous photo in Yad Vashem, the Holocaust Museum in Jerusalem, that someone from Europe is holding a sign, and the sign says, Jews go to Palestine. And someone juxtaposed it to another poster that says, Jews go back to Europe. I will tell you that, our story as Jews is complicated, and no story is similar to another story. We are also a people that have been through a lot. And when you talk about Americans, I think people mostly know Jerry Seinfeld and Woody Allen, and these are the Jews that are more kind of like famous. And the story that I wanted to tell you is that I screened the film a few weeks back in a university in New York, and after 75 minutes of the film, and as you said, the film mostly asks questions, it doesn't give answers. I had a 1-hour conversation with the two professors, and then we opened the floor to questions. And 5 different students gave the professor the notes, and there were 5 questions that was similar. And the question was, can I speak about the whiteness of the posters? And I was very shocked from the POV of students, and this is not a Jewish university. This is a university of kind of like different ethnicities in New York. New York is such a diverse city. I think that it's not on us to tell our story. It's about the other side to learn our story, but we probably, we didn't do a good job in it sucks that it's on us, right? But I said to the students, first of all, if you know anything about the demographics of Israel, you would know that Israel is more than 65% Mizrahi and Sephardic Jews that were ethnically cleansed from Morocco and Yemen and Egypt and Iran and Iraq and Syria and Tunis, and the list goes on and on and on. So first of all, most Israelis are not white in the way Americans see it. The second thing is that if you look at the whiteness of the posters, you go over the 251 photos of the kidnapped. Again, there are Muslims that were kidnapped. There's a 20 citizens from Thailand that were kidnapped. There is someone that from Tanzania that came to study agriculture in Israel. So, and of course, there is a lot of different colors of Jews, right? It's hard. We are not a race, and we're not just a religion, and we are a unique form of something in the tribes of the world. But even if we were all white, would it matter? Would it matter? Why do we need to have all this story for you to care about us? And even if we were all white, we were ethnically cleansed from Europe because we were not white enough. So I think that it kind of like answers your question about how the world is so binary and how they see us always as the oppressed that became an oppressor, and they flatten the story in a way that when you go and ask people on the street, why is there a war in Israel, in Gaza, sorry, or you ask people about what is Zionism, they will tell you it's the mission to ethnically cleanse Palestine from Palestinians. When someone that watched so many videos and thinks that they know what's happening, it's very hard to have a conversation. So for me, the film is, I'm trying to have a conversation with people that are on the other side, but are able to listen. It's important for us. When we were growing up, and I was growing up in Israel, I only had 2 television channels, even one. And I think for our parents, they only have like 1 radio station. So today we are so siloed and echo chambered that when you look at what is happening, and if I was a kid in America that is getting all the information from TikTok, and you see horrible photos, and those photos, when I watch them, the algorithm knows that I just want to watch more of those photos and more of those photos, then the other narrative gets erased or doesn't get seen at all, and the context changes. It doesn't matter that these are horrible photos, but it matters that there is no critical thinking and there's no other investigation. When I talk about critical thinking, it's also about like, what is the algorithm feeding my soul? What is, there are people behind the algorithms.
And why are they doing that, right? Do they have a motivation to do that? Yes. When I find it to be like emotional manipulation, because it's no doubt that we both agree how horrible what has happened to the civilians in Gaza is, of course, but it's a different thing to only show that and then emotionally hijack the audience to feed you on that. And when you start asking, why are you doing that? What's the interest? What's the motivation in only showing you that? And divide and conquer, that's an ancient technique of war, to divide a society so that they're only interested in warring and fighting amongst themselves, while other nations can be busy doing other stuff.
Correct.
So we know that from like Chinese and Russian and different kinds of countries have an interest in that we are fighting amongst ourselves on this topic.
Yes, there are algorithms, and there are we zoom out and then we zoom out more and then we zoom out more. If you talk about the assassination video of Charlie Kirk, that video was very viral, and it took hours to take it down. I'm thinking about what it does to someone's soul, a kid that watches a person gets assassinated in such a graphic way. And even if we didn't have a TikTok with a Chinese ownership, and let's say everything was decentralized, the algorithms and the programmers, they have a responsibility on that kid's soul not to show that video. And it took so much time until that video got removed. And I'm thinking about what it does to your, like, how you see people and how you see violence. So there is so much. We talked earlier about accountability and agency that these social media platforms do not do. They don't tackle hate. They know that hate online just leads to more traffic. You see, there's a video of a woman that has a book club, and she recommends book. Today I'm going to talk about the top 10 romance movies, and tomorrow I'm going to talk about the top 10 crime books, right? And you see her algorithm, and it's kind of like 300 views here, 400 views there, and then I'm going to talk about the top 10 books about Palestine. And you see just like the spike in traffic. So yes, it's a hot topic. It's a topic that is very, very charged. And it's when you talk about struggles, right, there is also the unification of struggles. So people look at the Palestinian struggle and they see themselves as the underdog. They see themselves as as a gay person. I can say that you look at suffering of people that are queer, and they want to be more accepted and have more rights, because a lot of countries don't give us rights. So you see yourself in the struggle of someone else, and then if you join together, then you might have more power and they will come and help you. What is so sad, I think, is that the Jews, for example, marched with Martin Luther King in the 50s and 60s, and Jews were considered second-class citizens in the United States. They were not permitted into golf clubs. They were not permitted into universities. There was quotas in universities. Jews, there are stupid Jews, but there's also smart Jews, and the smart Jews did make it in and did, build a name for themselves and was very successful. So after one generation or two generation, when you look at, again, minority groups, the Jews have been visible as a successful minority. It doesn't mean that there's also unsuccessful Jews, right? But this is a minority that stands out. And, I think it's incredible that people that came from nothing, with all of their families that was lost in the Holocaust, was be able to build something out of themselves, and others people see it and cannot explain this type of success and start to talk about conspiracy theories. So there was always a hate for that minority, but all of the stars have aligned after October 7, and in that way Hamas won, in the way of turning the world against us. And I will tell you, it's not easy to defend ourselves when we have a government that I am not very proud of. It's a government that, I knew when they were elected it's going to be bad, but I just didn't know how much it's going to be bad. So it's very hard to defend this government. But when I have a conversation, a one-on-one conversation with people, and I tell them, is every Russian person Putin? Is every American Trump? Is every Chinese Xi Jinping? So the way that we are viewed and singled out is there is no other way to say it as racism. But the problem is that we don't use racism, because anti-Semitism is not just about the race. And the Jews that are completely secular, or the Jews that are mixed, or the Jews that come from, different ethnical backgrounds, they're not the same. They don't have the same features. So yeah.
What I find so difficult too is that when we first start spotting the patterns and the manifestations of what is anti-Semitism, even when we see that and we say it out loud, like, hey, this is anti-Semitism, then we get bullied and stopped for saying, hey, don't use the anti-Semitism card. It's like you get that on top of that again, so you're not even allowed to call it out when you see it, because then you just get um then you just get that, like, why are you drawing the anti-Semitism card? So in a way you're like canceled for saying it too.
It's I will say this: if a minority tells you that something is anti-Semitic, you need to trust that minority group. We as Jews have been hurt by different. Even if I give you the example of anti-Zionist, if you consider yourself anti-Zionist, first of all, for Jews within Israel, Zionism is self-determination. Zionism is being a patriotic. Zionism is a people that didn't have that were expelled from their land for 2,000 years, were able to reclaim it. And I put a little asterisk and say that there were always Jews in Israel. But yeah, we were kicked out by the Romans and then scattered all over the world. But with with what you just said, it's kind of like I'm thinking about how when we talk to someone from the other side that uses the word Zionism and says, I'm not anti-Semitic, I'm just anti-Zionist, for them, they're saying I'm against Nazis. And for them, it's the joke is that most of the world's Jews live in Israel. So if you're not anti-Semitic, if you're just anti-Zionist, you're against more than half of the Jews that live in Israel.
Yeah.
Now, majority of Jews are Zionists. So you are just using this proxy word. And if I tell you, what about all of the Christians that are Zionists, all of the evangelicals, are you against them or are you just against the Jews? It's very similar to, and again, I cannot speak on behalf of all of the people that are pro-Palestinian. And in effect, in a way, I'm also a pro-Palestinian. I want self-determination for the Palestinians, and I want them to live and be able to coexist next to us, because between the river and the sea, there are two peoples and no one is going anywhere. But when people say free Palestine, do they mean free Gaza and the West Bank? Or do they mean free Palestine, the entirety of the land of Israel? If yes, why don't they mean British Palestine, which is also Jordan? Like, why is Jordan allowed to be Jordanian, but Israel is not allowed? And there is a question that they asked the mayor Mamdani, the mayor-elect, they asked him, do you believe in the right of Israel to exist? I think this question is tricky and wrong, because we don't need anyone's approval to exist. We exist, period. So that question within itself, it's kind of like the question phrases something that is very, very tricky. And you wouldn't ask that question to any other country. Like,
not even North Korea or Iran. Nobody's asking that.
Or Taiwan.
Yeah, Taiwan, like that creates such a different kind of situation where everything is like skewed and upside down when it comes to Israel. But I find that all of this stuff, when I zoom out, all of this stuff, the hate, the tearing down of posters, the divide, I find that in a sense it makes me think that it's so human to see the world in narratives instead of facts, right? We see narratives first, then we see facts. And if the facts change, then our narratives ideally should change as well. But I think that is such a human thing, because we evolved as these creatures that see the world as happening from daytime till nighttime, from morning till night. It's like we live in a world of narratives. Where are you from? Where are you going? Like, that's oftentimes the first thing you ask somebody when you meet them, like, where are you from? What's your story? Like, we want to, because that's so human to place people in this timeline of narratives. So that's how we see everything, I think. And then the more rational part of our brain, it's more difficult, it costs more, it's more complex, it takes an effort to see, okay, I have to look at these facts now and I have to change my narrative. That takes a lot of effort.
They say you're entitled to your own opinions, but you're not entitled to your own facts.
Yeah.
And I think part of the gaslighting that is happening is that, the hostages are actors or AI, but then the hostages, Hamas releases a video of hostages in captivity. And then they tell you the hostages are well taken care of. And then the hostages come out and say they were sexually abused. Like, there is a level of always doubting the narrative. It's not even victim blaming, because you are basically, what you're doing is constantly disbelieving the victim in a way. And Jews can be victims as well.
We don't like to be. We never want to be. I'm not a victim.
Yeah. And that is something that I know it happened. The big story that happened in Norway with women that wanted to join the Women's March to talk about the sexual war crimes that happened, and they were not allowed to. And I think that this is kind of like the singling out of the hypocrisy. I know that so many Israelis that have been going through did a lot of campaigns to advance women's rights and to talk specifically about sexual misconducts or sexual crimes. I can give you an example of Miss Universe that was, she's Israeli that won Miss Universe 20-something years ago, and she was raped a few days before the ceremony. And since then, she's been collaborating with the UN as Miss Universe to talk about her story. And on October 7, she was extremely disappointed from UN Women that took months to talk about what happened on October 7th. And since to the hostages, we sit here and we know today that also male hostages were sexually assaulted and abused. And the silence and the like, people are ignoring the stories that came out. That is something that, like, how else, I specifically didn't want to use the word anti-Semitism in the movie because I knew it's going to alienate some of the viewers. And I also think that not everything is anti-Semitic. Right. Not everything. Like, we also have to be very careful when we use that word. But when you... I forgot what I was saying. I was talking about when you have UN women ignoring what happened to women on October 7 and since, when you have the march in Norway and people don't want the Jewish women to march and talk about the horrific rapes that happened on October 7, that, by the way, some of them will never be told because they are either too horrible or the victims never survived. And the other side doesn't want to talk about it. What other word is there except for anti-Semitism? And the silence is deafening. And I know that the silence also happened in a lot of religious communities, interfaith communities, specifically in America, of imams and rabbis and priests. A lot of rabbis were extremely disappointed from the silence from their friends. And when we talk about it, we talk about after 2 years, we now have a fragile ceasefire. But I want to go back to 24 hours after October 7, when we already knew that there's 1,000 more people that were slaughtered and 250 something people that were kidnapped. 2 days later, a week later, 2 weeks later, Of course, 2 years later, people forget, narratives change. So many people have died. But those first weeks are painful, and I think it's what shaped where we are today. And that's why I think the film is a mirror to where we are today, because we don't want to accept each other's narratives. The situation has become so extreme that, you know, if you have a label of an Israeli, or if you have a Jewish name, like, or if you have a Star of David, then people will just not want to speak with you or look at you. My friend told me he went to a pub in Berlin, and he started talking to a woman, and he and her had a good time. They started kissing, and then she put her hand on his chest, and she suddenly saw he has a Star of David, and she just left the pub. Again, this is just a tiny story, but these happen all the time. So
It's almost tribal in a way. It's like,
yeah,
do
we
you
are very
belong to,
tribal.
yeah, do you belong to this tribe or that tribe? And I'm the correct tribe, you're the wrong tribe. We have to eliminate you, as a digression. I just had, the other day, I just had this woman, Lena, who's a Norwegian Druze from the Druze community. And we talked about what happened in Sweda in Syria, which is also reminds me of October 7th. It's like ethnic cleansing of everybody
Yeah.
who's a Druze person, right? And it's like, I just find that humans can be so primitive. It's like, I just want to slaughter you because you're different from me. That's enough. That's like, it's so insane that we have that capacity in us. And
we
yeah.
we are the worst kind of animal,
Yeah, yeah.
because other animals, they kill to eat, and we kill to kill.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah. And
yes.
just how we can persuade ourselves with narratives to do such things, like October 7th, like what happened in Sweden, like what happens in Sudan now and Nigeria, how people are being slaughtered because of narratives, because you convince yourself that you're on the right side, you're doing good. Like, another story that comes to mind is this guy in the U.S. who got on a plane in Chicago, went to Washington D.C. and gunned down this beautiful couple at the embassy, the Israeli embassy in Washington. And while he was being arrested, he was yelling "Free, free Palestine," obviously believing in his mind that he was doing something good for the world, right? Getting rid of genocidal people, like this beautiful young couple, like genociders. Like, he has convinced himself with a narrative. Uh,
And that story is, specifically, all stories are. It's hard to keep up with what is happening, but I will just zoom in for that story specifically, because when that couple was gunned down, they left the Jewish museum. Um, the the killer, the murderer, who we actually should call him a terrorist, he didn't know that they are Jews. They just left the Jewish museum. And after they were gunned down, you know, we talk about narratives, right? He didn't look at their LinkedIn profile and checked out, oh, they worked for the Israeli embassy, or one of them worked for the Israeli embassy. That's why they need to be gunned down. He just killed them and targeted them because they left the Jewish museum. So after they were assassinated, um, a lot of social media posts were about how this is a type of resistance, and it's justified because their association with the Israeli embassy. And I thought about, again, you talked about facts and opinions, how the narratives we tell ourselves. And we talk about anti-Semitism. They were gunned down because they left the Jewish museum. They weren't gunned down because of their opinions or beliefs or their LinkedIn pages or what they post online, just because they left the Jewish museum.
that is so insane that is enough to be killed, but also to be able to kill, just from that.
And that is also the responsibility we talk a lot about social media as if it's an algorithm high up, but in the end of the day, we all know people that work in social media companies, and we also have the responsibility as parents. We have the responsibility as friends and as colleagues, and part of the decision I made in the film as the director producer was to include different news medias, because we see we are again echo chambered in the sense that we watch different TV channels from Fox News to Al Jazeera, but we don't know what is happening on the other side or what the other person is thinking. And if you look at the generation below us or two generations down, they don't even watch the news, right? They watch YouTube and whatever there is on. You want to say TikTok, but some of them are on Snapchat. So you don't even know, there's an additional siloing. And, you know, it's the politicians are not doing the job. The social media platforms are not doing their job. And unfortunately, it's up to us. And this is why I think part of the messaging, and it's hard to say messaging about a film, because a film is about art. It's about asking questions, not about doing this or doing that. But I will say that it's important for me that people, if you are on the pro-Palestinian side, please follow people that are on the other side, and vice versa. I'm not asking you to follow the most radical voices, but find people that you think are fair and you think are factual, and they are people that you can trust or get information from them. I'm not telling you change your opinions altogether, but I'm saying you have to know what the other person is telling, so it would be easier for us to live in a society and to coexist in a society, because the world is smaller, and we are tribal, but the tribes are mixing all the time. And I do want to tell you a story about hope. So out of the hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of people that ripped down the posters, there was a person from India that tore down a poster. He's in India, but he lives in America. Tore down a poster in near Central Park, and once he did that, he was fired from his job. And after a lot of kind of like soul searching, he wanted to talk to someone from the other side and say, "I ripped down a poster. I got fired from my job." He couldn't find anyone from the other side, and he went to a rabbi, and that rabbi, you know, the rabbi has a job, even if they don't like it. I think it's religious leaders. It's this period specifically is very hard because we are looking for answers, and sometimes even the religious leaders don't have the answers. But that rabbi, she gave him a list of 20 books to read and 20 movies to watch. And they were about Israel and Palestine and the conflict. They were written by Palestinians and by Jews and by Israelis and by Muslims. And they debated every piece of literature and art. And after they did that, they became closer. And he even went to vigils for the hostages and put up posters. And after that, at the Yom Kippur service that year, he wrote a letter of apology for asking forgiveness from the Jewish community. I'm not saying that every person that ripped down a poster will do that, but I'm saying there is hope. People can change. And you asked me about kind of like the spectrum of people that rip down the posters. On the one side, there is the college student that sees an algorithm and is not critical thinking, and on the other side, there are the anti-Semites. Not all of them, they did something ugly. They did something that they wouldn't do to a poster about Uyghurs in China, or about the Armenians, in Turkey. But we're not going to make peace with our friends. We're going to make peace with our enemies. And when I screen the film, I prefer that the people that ask the questions are people from the other side, people that disagree with something in the movie, and not people that agree with me, because it's boring. I don't want to agree with people that agree with me. How do we? I'm not going to say preach to the other side, preach to not to our choir, but how do we have a dialogue without dehumanization, without vilification of the other side?
And I think it's also important to have a culture where we cultivate that it's okay to have difference of opinions, and we don't always have to strive to agree, and we don't always have to strive to now everybody has to be friends and everybody has to have the same opinion. Like we can accept differences and accept that we are in very large disagreement, but we can underneath that just be human anyway. We don't have to kill each other over it. We can just remain
Yes,
disagreeing.
I have friends that voted for Trump, and I have friends that
Yeah,
voted for Kamala. I have friends that voted for Mamdani, and I have friends that voted to Cuomo.
yeah,
And unfortunately, it's, I will say this, it's all bad choices.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
all bad choices. And I am not going to flatten my friends or say they voted this because they only think about one thing or the other thing. They are complicated people, like I'm a complicated person. And if I stop talking to them, or if I flatten their perspective, then it's just going to leave me with myself. And they were friends of mine for years, and a lot of people stopped speaking with me after October 7. I'm not going to stop speaking to any people anymore. Like, I want them in my life. And when you talk about I'm going to maybe regret this metaphor, but I'll use it. It's boring to eat the same thing every day.
Yeah, yeah.
You want to try different flavors and different textures because it's more interesting. Y- you know Part of, when you go to a museum, you see different types of art. Like, I love the fact that I have friends that have different opinions than me and influence me and inspire me and teach me new things and have different interests and do different things in their job. And again, I live in New York. I don't live in a tiny community that everyone does the same. Um, and I expect this from people. I expect that people will try, the people that failed me after October 7 because they said he's complicit or he's a Zionist. I know people that call me behind my back, he's a Zionist now. It's very hard for them. It's very easy for them to throw this word and cancel me. But they never sat down with me for a conversation. And also, they knew my values from before October 7, and they liked my values. But all of a sudden, I changed for them. And they are not Palestinian. They are Americans. So I have, we talk about lived experience. I know much more about the conflict and about what has happened in Israel, but also in Palestine, much better than them. But they decided that I'm a Zionist, and that is why they will not speak with me.
And that is so sad too, because at the very least, if I'm going to be diplomatic, it's at least intellectual laziness. Because if they would have just dug a little bit, they would have understood that. As you told me, like, you've been pro the Palestinian side as well, being an Israeli. You want them to have self-determination, and if they just asked you, like, are
Yes.
you are you pro that every Palestinian should die? Like, no, I want everybody to live. It's like they don't even care to do that. And in that sense, it's just laziness, where you just place people in different categories and just brand you as you're a Zionist,
But
you're
laziness,
this.
laziness is kind of like giving them an excuse,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't think it's
definitely. I
laziness.
know
I
it's
think
more than that.
it's
It's
being,
backstabbing, I
yeah.
think.
I think it's judgment and
Yes.
it's prejudice. And I will tell you this: I am on the political Israeli left.
Hmm.
But even if I wasn't, it's still not a reason to stop
Definitely.
talking to me.
Definitely.
I have friends that think very differently from me, and
Yeah, yeah,
I have friends that voted for Netanyahu, and I'm still talking to
Yeah.
them because that is how you change people's minds, right?
And that's what I think is like the beauty of Israel. Visiting Israel is that it's so much multitude of meanings and opinions and ethnicities and religions, and you can have cities like Jerusalem where you have mosques and synagogues and churches and everything at the same place at the same time. And I find that to be beautiful, and that people are actually on Team Israel anyway, despite their differences.
We are not perfect. We are
No,
not
no.
perfect, but I think that I had a Swedish friend that we were not very close, but I really loved her. And she told me after October, she didn't tell me. She shared on Instagram that Israel is the most racist country in the world. And I thought that, she knows me. And instead of asking me that, to tell me that Israel is the most racist country in the world was so, again, it is the vilification of the people. And that is what is, people are so quick to post something. You can criticize the Israeli government. We criticize the Israeli government more than anyone else. But to vilify a people and to talk about this without stepping foot in Israel and seeing the rich culture and the fact that you can sit in the bus next to so many people from different backgrounds and ethnicities and religions is something that doesn't happen in most of the countries of the world, specifically in the Middle East. Where there are no Jews living in Muslim or Arab countries.
Yeah, no. Speaking of narratives, it's like I feel like almost Israel is the underdog in this situation, because Israel is the country attacked on 7 different fronts at the same time. Israel is the country that at least is trying to survive. Israel is the country where you can criticize your government and your prime minister. You don't wind up in jail or getting hanged like in Iran for your opinions. It's like where you have
Correct.
freedom to say all this
Correct,
stuff.
but we want to compare ourselves to the best country in the world. We don't want to compare ourselves to Iran.
Of course.
But I will say,
in the Middle East,
yes,
right?
I will say that people say there should be no Jewish state. I'm okay with the fact that Israel will not be a Jewish state, but then I'm asking every country in the world to remove their religion from their state. Like every European flag has a cross, and on every bill in America it says "In God We Trust," and the amount of religion that it's kind of like as a gay person, you walk in the street and you hold hands with another man, and of course that you notice that this couple is a gay couple, but you don't notice the straight couples that are holding hands, right? So it's easy to single out the only Jewish state, but the fact that there are so many Christian and Muslim countries says a lot about the history of the world, and says a lot about how the world was shaped that way. The fact that there are so many countries that speak Spanish and English and Arabic says a lot about how the world became that way. It didn't have social media back then. Countries invaded other countries, and people converted to their religions and changed their language. So I'm okay with Israel not being a Jewish state if the entire world, we would live, like John Lennon says, as one, and there will be no religions. But as you said, we are tribal, and religion is part of our narrative as a tribe. We are connected to our heritage and our history, and it's part of our DNA, specifically Jews. You can look at Ashkenazi Jews and Sephardic Jews, and they share a DNA, specifically DNA to the land of Israel. But that is also something that is hard for me always to mention, because even if we didn't share DNA, this is our religion and this is what defines us. Like you would not tell any other minority you are not you're not a real Jew, right? You're
Yeah,
not,
yeah.
or prove it, right?
Yeah, you wouldn't say that.
You wouldn't say that.
And also I find it to be, I think it's so sad that there's something disingenuous about the pro-Palestinian movement, because for me, I'm obviously like pro-Israel, but I'm pro-Palestinian too, in the sense that I want civilian innocent Palestinians to live good lives in safety and security. But I feel sometimes, like especially now after the IDF in Israel has retreated from Gaza, I find it so astonishing that when civilian people in Gaza are dragged out into the streets by Hamas and tortured and killed in front of the cameras, then I hear nothing from the pro-Palestinian movement saying that and standing up for the civilians in Gaza. I feel like I should do that instead, because why are they not there when they don't have Israel to blame, when there's no
We
IDF to hate?
we are now transitioning from phase 1 to phase 2 of the ceasefire, which is fragile, but it holds. But um, what I thought during this war, in terms of, again, messaging is the fact that we, as the pro-Israeli team or side, even though we are one group, but
Yeah.
we have a lot of fights and clashes. We said bring them home because we knew that we demand this from our government. We don't have expectations from a terrorist organization. But when you talk about the messaging of the other side, freeing Palestine doesn't show any accountability and agency from Hamas. And if you have the Israeli army that is killing so many innocent civilians because Hamas is embedding themselves within those citizens, why isn't there no criticism of Hamas to stop the war and surrender? When you have so much money that was wired to Hamas to build those tunnels instead of hospitals, a system of tunnels that is bigger than the subway system in New York. Those tunnels could have protected women and children during the airstrikes of Israel, and there was no, demand of that. So the Palestinian people were pawns by Hamas. Palestinian people are, between a rock and a hard place. They have been living in a horrible situation under Hamas, and Hamas, because of Hamas, Israel has restrictions on what is happening in Gaza. I will say that what I wanted to see more is like with Ukraine, that a lot of immigrants came to Poland, and I know also to Scandinavia. I wanted to see more Palestinians, women and children, seek refuge in Jordan and Egypt. That was not also a demand by those countries. So the demand was always free Palestine or stop the war, only from Israel, and not understanding that it's a much more difficult geopolitical situation with hostages, with a terrorist organization that is threatening the lives of Israelis on a daily basis. And again, these are civilians in Israel. You talk about where is the outrage, or who are you targeting, or who are you addressing? And that is something that is shameful and sad. And I can tell you that in New York, the pro-Palestinian protests are continuing. And again, Israel is the only one that is singled out, and it's the only one to blame. I remember that a few weeks ago, there was an article about the post-trauma of the Lebanese people because of the airstrikes in Lebanon. I think that I'm sure that Lebanese people are suffering because of those airstrikes. I can tell you that I have friends that live on the border not all the border, but near the border within Israel that are suffering from what Hezbollah did during the war and even before the war, years and years of rocketing. But there is no accountability and no fingers that are pointed at Hezbollah terrorists that, again, embed themselves within the villages near the border. And again, this is just like a headline of an article. Lebanese people are suffering because of the Israeli strikes. No one is asking themselves. So you talk about Israel being the underdog or having seven fronts. The Palestinians are the underdog between Israel and Hamas. Like they are the underdogs. But if you zoom out in the Middle East, Israel has the right to defend itself and its citizens. And the fact that Israel is getting we can talk just about that for hours, about the ammunition that Israel is getting. But in some way, like Ukraine is fighting for Europe, Israel is helping specifically the United States, but other allies around the world combat what is happening in parts of the Middle East. Iran has been calling to the destruction of Israel and America for years and years and years. And the fact that we are not talking about that, we're just talking about what Israel is doing in Iran. I can tell you that my friend went to a film festival a few months ago, a very prestigious film festival, and the best friend that my friend had, so my friend is Israeli, and out of all of the other filmmakers, she started talking to an Iranian filmmaker, and they became best friends, two women. And they both worked on films that were presented in that festival. And the programmer of the festival approached both of them as they were sitting to eat lunch. So it's Iranian and Israeli sitting, having lunch, talking about life. And the festival programmer, who is British, came up to them and approached the Iranian person, and it's all women. So the festival programmer told the Iranian filmmaker, "I'm so sorry for the attacks that you had to suffer from Israel, But the British film programmer didn't tell the Israeli woman, "I'm so sorry that you had 300 ballistic missiles on your head in one night." And that's just, again, these are those tiny encounters that people face because Israel is considered the aggressor. And it's much more complicated than that. And that is what I try to do, at least with the film, in my tiny piece of the world, to talk about narratives and to talk about how it's not as clear as one can think or see.
Before we go to the end there, obviously I have to ask you about New York now and what it's like living there as a Jewish person and with Mamdani and everything. How do you find that, and what are your thoughts about that?
There is an article. There is an article that came out yesterday. The person that ran Mamdani, the campaign manager, some of the campaign managers are Jews, and Mamdani is 34. I think his campaign manager is 24. I think that Mamdani embraces a lot of anti-Zionist Jews, but what people don't tell the people that are not Jewish is that anti-Zionist Jews is a small fraction of the Jewish world, and also that when people tell you I'm Jewish but I'm anti-Zionist, it's because their family are from America. They didn't experience the European anti-Semitism, and they didn't end up in Israel because their families were either ethnically cleansed from Arab and Muslim countries or didn't suffer through the Holocaust. So they ended up in Israel. So it's very easy for an American Jew with their family being there for over 150 years to say there is no anti-Semitism, and to say I'm an anti-Zionist because I don't need Israel, I have America. Again, this is the story of the campaign manager of Mamdani. It's not correct for every American Jew, because most American Jews are Zionists. But when you say I'm Jew, but I'm anti-Zionist, it's like saying I'm Jewish, but I'm not communist, or I'm Jewish, but I'm a socialist, or I'm Jew. Like, there are so many different types of Jews that define themselves, so you would not hate them, right? I'm Jewish, but I'm not this, or I'm not that. I think that with Mamdani, he hasn't stepped in office yet, so we need to wait until January 1st. But there was a big demonstration a week ago in New York in front of a synagogue, and it was run by an organization called Nefesh B'Nefesh. It's a nonprofit that talks with American Jews and diaspora Jews that want to live where they live right now and move to Israel. They want to do it mostly because they feel like their country is not the same country as they used to be, but some of them meet an Israeli and fall in love and want to move. I don't know. There are so many different stories. This organization, the nonprofit, talks about language barriers and taxes and how you manage the system and what you do with kindergartens. And the protest that happened outside of the synagogue was very violent and aggressive. And it's almost impossible to have any sort of Jewish or Israeli event without a protest or a demonstration. So when Mamdani was asked about it a few days later, he said that events that break the international law should not be held in religious centers. Now, that worldview is very, very dangerous. First of all, you don't know what was said there, and you don't know what happened there. To assume that every Jew that attended there will go and live in the West Bank shows more about you than about the people that were in the event. But again, even if they were all are going to live in the West Bank, it's America. There's freedom of speech, and it's kind of like with my film. Theaters don't want to screen the film because they are afraid. So sometimes I need to screen it in synagogues. Now they'll tell me you're not allowed to screen it in synagogues because it's too controversial, right? So it's kind of like there's not even a place to do that. And again, change it with every other type of minority, and you will see how distorted it is. And I think that if Mamdani's team is going to affect relationships and create boycotts between Israel and New York, at the end of the day, yes, Israelis are going to suffer. Israelis are going to experience lack of grants, financial difficulties. But who is gaining from boycotts? Like you have researchers of brain cancer in Israel, and you have technological advancements on your iPhone, and you have art that is coming from Israel. And if you want to change the policy in Israel, the way to do it is not through boycotts. And you cannot compare you cannot say this is the only way, because it's not working. There are other ways. And if you want to convince the people of Israel in what they need to do, you need to do it with the people of Israel. And I will tell you that a lot of Israelis want to live in peace. Like if you saw when the ceasefire was over, when the ceasefire happened, Israelis were thrilled. They were so happy that the war was over. They were happy that their sons and daughters are coming back from the army, or they were happy because the hostages are coming home, or they were happy because they can go back to their, work in the bakery or in the office or in the school. So people would be surprised if they sat down with an Israeli and talk about life.
But are you concerned in New York, like yourself personally? Do you think it will be difficult to live there? Do you think you will end up moving back to Israel? Or what do you think? Are you concerned for the future there?
There was a sketch in the Israeli SNL a few weeks back, and it showed a person that is leaving Israel because of Netanyahu, and then there's a person living in New York because of Mamdani, and they both talk with each other, and they say, "Oh, you're so stupid that you're going to the other side." Um, it's we're not gonna go down without a fight. I think no matter, I looked at the communities here in Scandinavia. The Jewish people are resilient, and they do have initiatives, and they have hope, and they have each other. They don't have some politicians help, some allies help, but they are the people they've been waiting for. No one else is coming to help them. And the same with Mamdani. I think that he supports the boycott movement, which is very, very unfortunate and can be very, very dangerous, because if you boycott Israel, then tomorrow you're going to boycott China, and in 2 days you're going to boycott another country that you disagree with. We live in a world that we rely on each other, and I will tell you that when I see someone, when I see someone that is walking in a neighborhood in New York that is not considered, considered mixed, even, I will say, and they have a kippah on, a yarmulke, or they have a big Star of David on their chest. I think that is resilience and that is bravery, but it's also brave to share something on social media or march for the hostages, or I don't know, some people, you will go and eat in a Jewish restaurant. There's a Jewish Ethiopian restaurant that in Harlem, right? There are different ways of activism and different ways that we can support each other. I don't know what will happen. I know that we will be as we will not go down without a fight, because it's there's a lot of things that are unfair, right? There's a lot of things, and I can't have, I can say, don't do this, it's unfair, and someone on the other side will say, well, it's not unfair what's happening to the Palestinians. I don't have a way from where I sit in New York to solve every crisis in the world, but I have I live in New York, and he is my mayor, whether I like it or not. I think that so many people, back to your original question, that are obsessed with the war in Gaza, were so much affected more with the war in Ukraine. And I look sometimes at Americans, how some decisions by the government and some decisions by their congressmen and Senate members are affecting their daily lives. But it's much more easier to talk about something that is out of your control. You can talk about the success or the failure of the movement, bring them home, because 60, 70 hostages died in captivity. But there's such a success because more than 150 hostages came out alive, and in a sense, the movement won, because the movement was able to make the politicians in Israel and Trump understand that we prioritize the hostages. Is the Free Palestine movement successful? I don't think the Free Palestine movement is, and again, talking in very large generalizations, but parts of the Free Palestine movement is not successful because it is there's still like the war has been happening for 2 years. It you know, and I wanted to stop the war, you know, after 1 month. I wanted to stop the war after 1 week. I wanted the hostages out. So
What's ironic is that they could have had that, you know, as Israel said, like to Hamas, lay down your weapons, give us the hostages, and there won't be a single bomb. There won't be a war. They had that opportunity the whole way.
yes,
It's so
yes.
sad that we had that war instead. Like it didn't necessarily need to happen. Like it could have been avoided.
Israelis, the majority of Israelis, wanted the hostages at any cost, and prioritized the hostages, even if they knew that Hamas will still be in power. Yeah, it's very, very tragic that this war happened for 2 years, and the question now, the movie was about the urgency. When I screened it, it was about the urgency of releasing the hostages, making sure people remember that there are hostages, and also stopping the war. Now, when I screen the film, it's about what have we become and how do we continue, and how do we have these conversations with people that we disagree with. The social fabric has been torn, but can we start a healing process? It's going to take a long time, but where do we go from here? And yeah, it's all questions. I don't have the answer, but
And that's very Jewish as well, to
yes,
answer a question with a question. And
yes,
the
yes,
question
yes.
is the most important thing
Correct,
because the
correct,
answers, they differ. They are
correct,
dynamic.
correct, correct. Yes.
But Nim Shapira, thank you so much for coming here and speaking with me today.
Thank you for having me. Yes.
Thank you.